Anna, I was thinking we could categorize things according to emotion, expression, and environment, but I'm open to your thoughts on that. And if you have a different suggestion. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your response.
Yes, I couldn't respond because I was uploading the image. Yes, sounds great.
Okay. So in terms of visual presentations, it's similar to what you would do with a verbal presentation, right? There are certain things you have to consider at a high level, and we just probably have time for the high level. But before we jump into that, because I'd love to hear from all of you, like what programs or what platforms you're currently using in terms of presentations, so that we could kind of maybe share even some other things that you hadn't considered. So I'm going to share my screen here. And these are some different tools that you may have used or are using or learning: Adobe Express, Canva, Google Slides, Keynote, PowerPoint, Prezi, which I don't know if anyone's used Prezi recently, so let me know if that's one that you're using, or SlideBean. Of those options, which tools are you currently using for your presentations? You can let us know in the chat or unmute because we're a small but humble group.
I did use Prezi quite a while ago. It's very difficult, but the presentation really came out well. Other than that, good old boring PowerPoint.
I can back you up on that, Linda. My partner's an architect and he does this fiddly stuff, and he loves Prezi for a presentation he did for a job interview recently.
Oh, and then Anna shared also Centimeter, which is a new one to me. So I wonder if you want to tell us a little bit about your experience with Centimeter.
Yes, how do you say spell correct? It's Mentimeter.
Oh, Mentimeter. Okay.
Yeah, it's a way you can use it both in person or digitally. So you include the audience or the team or what it is to get your slide kind of inclusive. So you ask the people that participate, and then they vote, usually via their mobile phones, and then the numbers come up on the slide. So you can mix the slides like normal slides and kind of slides created by the whole group of people.
Thank you for sharing. And if you folks are interested in a link to Mentimeter, I've also used it and many presenters use it. It's very useful in terms of if you have people in your audience who have their phones in their hand, which we know everyone multitasks. So they can use their phones and actually engage with your content instead of just doing something else on their phones. If you're curious about Mentimeter, it is a free tool. I'm sure there are paid and upgraded options, but it is a tool you can use for engagement. The reason I asked about the tools is because I'm a corporate escapee, but currently I'm self-employed. And I noticed in the corporate environment, they tended to gravitate towards PowerPoint, Microsoft products, things like that. But now I almost always use Google and or Canva for presentations. But regardless of what tool you're using, the concepts are the same in terms of making visuals interesting. So let's talk first about emotion. And Anna, I will invite you to jump in at any point to share your insights, and no problem. Let's explore what this looks like. But what are some ways that we can generate emotion when it comes to visuals? Feel free to share some of your insights or observations.
The right images, not the wrong ones, right? The right images. And words are powerful if they are meaningful.
Okay. There's more to dive into there. The right images, which will beg the question of what is right versus wrong, and then meaningful words. Thank you for kicking that off, Carolyn. Anyone else?
Something surprising.
The element of surprise. I love it. Thank you for sharing, Linda. Any other thoughts on emotion from our presentations? Music, Julie shared in the chat.
Colors.
I love that, colors. That's my favorite, Anna, is the use of color, especially if you're a business owner. Of course, you're going to use your branding colors, things of that. And you put a lot of thought into your branding when you're a business owner. But even if you're not a business owner, if you're working for a company, you have to use company colors and protocol and things like that. So color is going to be very important. And also the intentional use of color to make your text pop is going to be very important as well. Engaging questions or jokes from Catherine. Go ahead.
Overall layout design. So,
Layout design.
Not too much in any place. That is my pet peeve of all, is when someone puts up a slide and says, well, you probably can't make this out.
That's not very effective, is it? Don't use it if you can't read it or if it's not useful for your people to read. Layout design is an interesting one because I think that it could also go into expression in terms of how you personally like to express yourself and how you like to organize thoughts and lay them out. That can be a very personal thing in terms of how you like to do the layout if it's not a templated option. And I think you had something to offer.
Yes, I wanted to add what Linda said. I think it's so sad when presentation starts like the presenter is saying something like, oh, I'm so sorry, but I'm not so good at making slides. And that's, you know, I feel so sorry because if the presenter didn't say this, it would have been so much better. Like many times I don't see anything wrong with the slides. So that's a big thing for emotions. Like don't tell people how to feel about your slides.
Ooh, that's a good one. Because you're framing it, right? You're framing that time together. And if you're starting off the conversation saying, I'm not very good at this, then people either might try to find the faults with it and or will not be 100% there with what you're trying to present. So I think that's really important you bring that up. Rebecca, it looks like you raised your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say to kind of follow up on what Linda said and also the imagery, to use images that communicate your message so that you don't have to use as many words. I see a lot of PowerPoint's presentations sometimes where it's so wordy that you can't get through it, and or presentations where they're saying the exact thing that's on the slide. And so if you're able to encapsulate that message with an image that can not only invoke emotion but get the point across, like a multi-purpose image, I would say that's well known in its definition. You know, it's not open to interpretation.
Well, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I know we talked about the right images a little bit, and if you're okay going down this path with me, when it comes to the right images, I think a lot of people default towards stock images, right? Either whatever the company is providing for you to draw from, and I'm sure there's company approved ones and non-company approved photos, or stock photos you might find on places like Pixabay or Unsplash if you're pulling your own images. In general, just from a business standpoint, what I'm noticing is that if you have faces, that they create a different response in your audience, especially if your faces are diverse or different types of people, different cultures, religions, whatever represented within your images, that will have a different response, especially with connecting with your audience. So that's going to be really important. And also some people are encouraging others to use like personal photos. And I'll share an example from a resource that I saw. I thought this was cute, not this one. I mean, he just took a picture of his dogs, and who doesn't like dog photos or cat photos? And then he just put some clouds or word bubbles around them. If you can't read it, the cloud bubble on the left says, whatever, Sage, she totally isn't stable, so I'm going to say 2. And Sage is the dark dog on the right, says she is definitely a 3 for housing. So I just think this is interesting. If you do have personal photos, and maybe they're not too personal, because you don't have to show your house, you don't have to show family members if you don't want to, or something like that. But most people resonate well with pets, or if you have like props. Like sometimes if I'm going to a meeting, I'll wear something like this to my meeting just to be a little fun, a little different. It just depends on how formal or informal your meeting is, but you can also use visuals that are 3D, but we'll get to that when we talk about environment. So when it comes to photos, what do you like to see when you're at a presentation? Because understanding that many of us multitask and maybe are just listening but are not watching. What kind of photos kind of create a reaction for you as an audience member or get you to take notice?
I like seeing company photos with real people that you're working with, because you may have an interaction with them and it pulls you in, or it's someone, we live in like the work from home scenario now. So maybe it's someone you've spoken with a lot on the phone, or you've had a lot of meetings with, but you've never, seen them in certain settings before. And so I think that also just shows that the company's staying up to date with what is currently going on. It's not a promotional photo, but maybe a charity event that just took place, 2 weeks ago. It's refreshing when companies are staying current with their employee engagement.
I love that. Yeah. And I wish more companies were flexible and adaptable enough to do that and to use more current photos. And sometimes they have to get releases from their employees. So there are definitely some more considerations going on there. Linda?
I think just when I've presented, the one thing that really seems to pull people out is any sort of before and after. Like their brain wants to see what is going to happen to this space or to this design. They're like, oh, I was like, whoa, people really care. It's kind of surprised.
Very cool. So before and after, showing like the state before and then the photo after, those are always very powerful, even in a business sense. And it could be pretty easy to pull that together from a company standpoint. Here's where we were before, here's where we are today. So pull into the pride of the team working together and doing the work together. I think it's also interesting to introduce things like memes or GIFs. So GIFs are, I don't know what it stands for, animated images basically. And you can pull GIFs from any of the tools we talked about. They're all available on all of the tools. And so the benefit of a meme or a GIF over a meme. So GIFs might be things that you don't need context around to get the joke or to see that it's amusing or funny or interesting. Memes are a little bit different because usually they're pulling out a cultural reference of some sort or a pop culture reference. Usually they're pulled from movies or specific scenes from a movie. So we may not always get the context behind a meme, but there are tools where you can generate your own memes. If you go to Google and search for meme generator, you can create your own meme using your own photos if you'd like. Now, of course, this is not going to resonate in every situation. If it's a more professional environment, you may not want to use a meme, but if it's just your team, or if it's if you're just more fun and interesting and you just have a different lighthearted take on things, it might be a good way to get people interested and to see if they understand the reference in terms of memes. Has anyone here heard or seen someone using a meme as part of a presentation? I think Anna was raising her hand.
Yes, I also think that a meme is less, or a GIF is better because meme usually contains text. So the less text is better, I think.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes text is, depending on how big your screen is compared to what people can see, sometimes the viewing is restricted if there's text overlay on a meme. So that's a good point. And GIFs are animated usually, so it does create that visual interest for people, and especially people who are very distractible or multitasking, it might catch their attention in a different way than a static meme. I see a question from Shawana in the chat. Where do you find GIFs or memes? So I believe I use Canva for this. You can insert a GIF using Canva, and you can use a free account on Canva as well. I think PowerPoint enables this. Does anyone know the answer to that? I don't use PowerPoint a lot. It might be an advanced feature. And for sure, Google allows you to insert GIFs. I've seen that option on Google. So some of you were checking out Google or considering using Google. And I believe Prezi does too. We had one person who's using Prezi. Do you know if Prezi allows you to do that?
I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah, that might be something worth looking into. But even if it doesn't have it today, I guarantee you there will be a rollout where it's going to come in the future, because if it's rolling out to these other tools, they have to stay competitive with each other. So they're going to keep offering similar options there. Those are different ways to express or to imbibe emotion into presentations. We talked about music. We talked about GIFs. We talked about personal photos over stock photos. We talked about colors. We talked about layouts of your slides. And then has anyone, so here's another possibility for creating more emotion is a short video. Now this is challenging because if you don't know how to enable video sharing on your presentation, it could go wrong very quickly. It could be a big mess technology wise. But if you are comfortable with it, I would encourage you to incorporate video as part of your presentation. Now there are some resources in the Campfire document that have specific ways you can embed video into your presentation if you'd like to look that over. And the person who recommended that said, please don't embed a YouTube video because it doesn't allow them to get the traffic from that if you embed it into your presentation. So it kind of shortchanges the person who created the video. You can certainly create your own video if it's something that you're talking about, or you don't care about views maybe as much on your video. There are other ways to embed it so that you can credit back the person who you're taking the video from. Linda, you had something to share there?
Yeah, just on the video, I was surprised. I did a presentation on self-compassion, and kind of the person who does a lot of that is Kristen Neff, and it took 10 seconds to find a video that was 30 seconds, and she just very succinctly says, here's what self-compassion is, here's how it affects soldiers. I mean, it was a very compelling 30 seconds. I was like, whoa, it would have been such a miss to not include the face and the voice of somebody who had such a huge influence in the world.
Yeah, video can work really well, especially if it's a shorter clip of 5 minutes or less, or if it directly leads to a point you want to make in the presentation. Where video may be a little self-indulgent is where if it doesn't tie into what you're talking about, or if it's just an entertainment piece, people might lose interest. Or if it's just a really long video, people are watching a video, but there's a live person there and it feels kind of strange. Like you go into a restaurant and there's TVs everywhere, but you're sitting across from someone. Who would you rather pay attention to is the person right in front of you. So be cautious when using video, but it can be a way to evoke emotion, especially if it's branded company videos where they're sharing their impact on whatever initiatives they're doing. It can be a powerful branding tool to use as well. So if you have snippets of video, that's not a bad thing to consider when it comes to evoking emotions. I want to make sure we've addressed the emotion piece of it. So are there other examples you've noticed from either presentations you've delivered or you've attended where emotions came up for you as an attendee, or the presenter did a good job of evoking emotions? Anna, do you have anything to add on that topic?
Yes, I went to an event, and there were, I think, 2 presenters that really touched me emotionally, and one of them was the way he ended the presentation. I think how you end a presentation is so important. Instead of saying something like, oh, well, this was what I wanted to say. He gave 2 sentences. He summed up the presentation, like what he wanted us to walk away with. So it was like, how do you say? a slap with information that he was proud of. You could feel that he was proud and passionate, instead of like, well, this was only it, or something like. So yeah, how you end it to me is very important.
Yeah, that's a great addition. The ending of your presentation should allow people to do something next. And it's good if you have a powerful visual to kind of cement what you're asking people to do. Even better if it's a callback to what you came out with. So if you came out and you have a beautiful title slide that kind of visualizes what you're going through, and you end on a similar slide that maybe summarizes things with a quote or 2 steps you can take today or something like that, your ending is even more powerful than your introduction. So those are times to utilize your most powerful graphics and images or quote that can really stay with people so that they can remember you. I have a few hands raised.
Oh.
Who wants to go first? Linda or Julie?
I guess I'll go. I have a slide that I have used in presentations. I just want to kind of put this out, out to the group. It's one of these images that it just looks like a bunch of splotches until you look at it more closely. You can see it's a Dalmatian. It's a Dalmatian dog. And I end with that, you know, it's right toward the end. And I say, today was about seeing things differently, seeing something that you might not have seen before. And I haven't actually gotten feedback about that, but I just, I don't know how people would think about that.
I mean, it sounds like it's a powerful way to end, and the focus is on the visual. So
Right.
if people don't see anything in the beginning, are you giving them enough time
Yes.
to kind of process that? And so some people need
Yes.
more time.
Right. I say, look at this, but you know, don't jump too quickly. It might take, you know, some people can see it right away. And last week, a couple weeks ago, I was somewhere and she still didn't see it. One person still didn't.
It's like one of those ink blots, right? When you see
Right,
it, you're like,
right.
I don't see anything in that thing.
Right.
And maybe that would be a good engagement piece earlier in the presentation. So it's not what people leave with, because if they don't see anything, then the aha and the insight is not there for them. And they might be feeling like, oh, is there something wrong with
Missed
me?
it.
Or did I fail at something because I didn't get that piece? So maybe keeping it in the middle so you can discuss it a little bit. And so people can maybe catch up after the discussion and say, oh, yeah, I can see the Dalmatian now.
I've done that before I've used a few different visuals in the beginning, just to say, I'm going to expand your ideas in your mind, and we're all going to think about the big picture and not just what you see, but what is possible, and then go into the presentation. So it like opens their mind, and then they dive into the content.
That's a great example, Carolyn. Yin?
Oh, I think storytelling, you know, you're choosing the right ways to tell, you know, just stories that are meaningful to whatever, you know, have to say, and also the delivery, right? The tone, vocal tone, it just has to kind of stimulate people's imagination, eventually hearts, felt feelings, and all that. I think that contribute just to how people would relate or vibrate. And when you talk about you know, images, I think it's almost like to some extent like a painting, right? When we go to art galleries, and why, you know, some paintings just we would resonate more with, but that's very personal. But I think it's you know, that the impact it has, and also they have a supporting role in emphasizing what we are saying, right? They have to be meaningful. So it's, yeah.
Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing in. And I think it's important to stress that your visual side of your presentation is just one piece of it. There's also the verbal side of it, and they should complement each other, but neither one should be more important than the other. It's about creating an entire picture, which creates that experience, and folks can feel the emotion from it. So your visuals should complement and aid that verbal delivery and what you're trying to get across to people. So thank you for sharing that, Yin. It is a painting, and we'll all have a different reaction to that painting. So allow your voice to complement the visual as well. In the chat, I'm just sharing a video from Amy Cuddy. You may be familiar with her. She did the TED Talk, Your Body Shapes Who You Are, or something like that. I forget the exact title. But I actually did a review of her video from a speaker coach perspective. And of the other TED Talks I've looked at, she really was amazing at visuals in her presentation. And she was summarizing research, which is kind of heavy content, but she did it really well in a single slide. So I posted that video there. It's my review of the entire presentation is like 19 minutes long, but I talk about her visuals in the first third of the video. So you're welcome to check that out, because I do share examples of the different visuals. She had a before and after too when it comes to gestures amongst politicians, which I thought was really, really had an emotional reaction from her audience. So those are some examples to share for that. Does anyone else want to bring anything else about emotion, or should we move on to expression?
Talk. One thing that I do at the end of a presentation, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I get engagement, is I ask the question of one word on what you thought about the presentation. And that gravitates people, it brings people in, and they'll share what they feel and what they got from the presentation. And again, it's engaging, and it's just one word at the end of the presentation.
I love it. And I'm sure your audience really responds to it. I'm sure you've heard some interesting words as well. Yeah, that's a good feedback tool as well for you to see what words people are putting out there. So you can then determine if you want to adjust anything from your presentation as well. So thank you for sharing that.
It's also quite brave.
All right, let's talk a little bit about expression. Now, expression is about both how you express yourself as a presenter and what you want to express with your content. So there's a few different things that go into that. There is text you're using on your slides. There's whether you use photos, icons, graph charts, maps, you know, the types of tools you like to showcase on your content. There's of course color. And you may use contrasting colors as well, or very bold colors or things of that nature. If you like to use graphs and pie charts and things like that, that are very, are trying to summarize very complex information in a single slide, make sure that your folks can understand what is being summarized, that there's a title to the graph above it so that it's very clear what's going on, and describe the graph. I've seen presentations where people just put a graph out there and then they're like, yeah, you can read the graph, I'm not going to read it. And then they move on. And I'm like, I don't even know what they were trying to share with that. Or it's too small to see. Generally, when it comes to text, we want to make sure that our text is at least 24 point size, probably bigger, especially if you have, if it's just illustrating a point or a quote that you want to share. I'm just noticing what's in the chat. And then slide orientation and slide layout goes into your expression as well. It can be very monotone if your slides are always organized from left to right, or right to left, or top to bottom. So you can certainly change the orientation of your slide to meet different points or different transitions within your presentation. You can also do this with colors. It is suggested that you could go through different points by changing the color. So for example, if you say today we're going to talk about A, B, and C, A might be red, B might be yellow, and C might be blue. So that's a good visual reminder for you and for your audience as well. Carolyn shared in the chat that she asked for a word or short phrase at the end of the session, and it's a great way to summarize learning and build inspiration. Well, that's good that you didn't receive any negative words. When you invite people to share, they're usually happy about the sharing opportunity, right?
It helps them to build, just to summarize what we talked about, and also like build the what's next. So it's, it's powerful. It's a good way to end a session and get them all to hear what everybody else has learned. And it's, good group think. So, and good group think, not the other kind. So yeah, it's good.
Love it. Thank you for sharing these examples. This is what makes this a richer conversation. I wanted to share a quick little example of using contrasting colors. This is kind of in a format of an infographic. So you may not be able to read the text here, and that's fine. You don't need to see the text, but we're looking at the color contrast between that yellow and the blue. Now, yellow is a color that is usually an energizing color. Blue is usually a color of trust or loyalty. So it's important to switch it up. If you're working in a business environment, you might want to gravitate towards colors like black, white, gray, things like that, and then have a pop of your text being a different color. You'll notice in the middle of the slide here where it talks about donating blood, the text in donate blood is red. So you can use 2 different colors for your text as well, and you can use different sizing of text within the same slide. And these are ways to really make things pop and create some visual interest there. And then here's a bigger slide of that where the donate blood is highlighted in all caps, but the rest of the text is in black. It just makes it pop differently. Has anyone else used color contrast in terms of presentations they've delivered or seen before?
Yes, like that one. I like when if you have, for example, 2 colors, like the background is white and then the font is black, then maybe the third slide is the background is black and then the font is white. So it shifts a little bit, kind of, you wake up.
Yes, it's like a burst of sunshine in a presentation or a burst of light during the presentation. I agree.
I've experienced and created presentations where there were way too many colors. It was too much and everybody just kind of shut down. So that's one thing just to note, that maybe too many colors might be overwhelming for your participants. And then, choosing which ones are the most impactful is, maybe something to think through and address. So that's, yeah.
That's a good point. Is it too visually stimulating? And you may not know the answer to that because every audience is different.
Right.
But being aware that certain colors are harder to read than others. And for people who may be colorblind, reds maybe don't show up as well. Colors like that, just thinking that through. And you can still create contrast with black and white and then create visual interest through your photos or icons or something else that maybe is easier for people to read.
And you can do I think it's an accessibility like survey or assessment that we have it on PowerPoint. I don't know about the other, methods that other products that people are using, but it can tell you if it's, if it's flashing, it's too much for someone who maybe is prone to seizures, or, someone who's colorblind, what do they actually need? What are the colors that you can choose? So that's all to keep in mind. Yeah.
I love that. And that's a setting within PowerPoint, the accessibility piece. Okay, good to know.
And my husband builds websites, so he sometimes throws me some ideas. I'm like, didn't think about that. But anything that's flashing is going to be challenging for people who are, seizure prone. So we know, stay away from flashing and kind of use different, if it's slow on the flashing, like if you have a banner that goes across your site or whatever that looks like, make it slow and not fast, because, it can affect people and, in really dangerous ways. So, yeah.
That's a good point. And if you use animations on your slides, which is, you can animate the text going onto the slide, you can animate other pieces of the slide, make the delay longer, just to be sensitive to folks who don't like things being thrust at them very quickly. Just increase the delay. You can change the amount of seconds the delay is for those kinds of things. I actually had an audience member tell me, I had a GIF inside of one of my presentations, and it was just models walking down a runway. I didn't feel like it was fast, but one of the audience members told me that it was too much to see on the slide. So if you do have an animation on your slide, maybe just take a pause from sharing that slide. This is something I don't see enough presenters do, is once they put their slides up, it's like the slides don't go anywhere. They stay there forever and ever, but you can actually remove and stop sharing and show yourself again on the screen, especially if you're asking an engagement question or you're asking folks for their feedback on something. So I think it's important to know that you can take a break from the slides, especially if the slides are hopping or have movement on them. Take a break and go back to just faces like you might in a meeting, so someone gets that time to rest.
10 minutes left.
Yeah, so
all
Jenn,
right. Well, I
is
do want to make sure we can wrap up. I know Linda wanted to make sure we have some sharing insights and appreciation. Thank you so much for being here. First of all, I just want to say it's been nice to walk through these examples, and the things that I shared on the screen are in the Campfire document as resources. All of them are linked out. Linda has graciously put everything in there. She's so organized. I wish I was as organized as she is. So Anna, would you like to add any final thoughts before we kind of wrap up and share insights?
Yes, I think this was a very valuable information, and I love to be in the same room as other passionate about. It sounds a bit nerdy to say slides, but you know, it's in today's world. As I don't remember who said it, but it's so important. It's part of our lives now.
cool.